Pirates Exposed. What's really behind the legends? When you hear the word pirate, what comes to mind? A one-eyed rogue with a parrot on his shoulder saying,
"Arr, matey!"
A buried chest of gold hidden on a tropical island. Or perhaps Captain Jack Sparrow stumbling drunkenly across the deck of the Black Pearl. But the truth is far more fascinating and far more brutal. Pirates were not just swashbuckling adventurers. They were desperate men and sometimes women, shaped by poverty, war, and opportunity. They were sailors who turned outlaw and rebels who challenged empires and merchants of terror on the high seas. In this video, we're going to expose the real story behind the legends of pirates. From the earliest raiders of the ancient world to the so-called Golden Age of Piracy, all the way to the myths Hollywood created, this is the untold truth of life under the Black Flag. So grab your cutlass, hoist the sails, and prepare to set course into the world of pirates. The origins of piracy. Piracy is as old as the sea itself. As long as there have been ships carrying valuable cargo, there have been pirates willing to take it. The first records of piracy go back over 3,000 years to the ancient world. The sea peoples of the Mediterranean terrorized Egypt and the surrounding coasts during the Bronze Age collapse. Even the mighty pharaoh Ramses III wrote about fighting them. Later, in ancient Greece, piracy was almost considered a normal profession. Homer's Odyssey even mentions raiders casually asking strangers, "Are you a pirate?" as if it were as common as being a farmer or a fisherman. The Romans, however, despised pirates. In the 1st century BCE, piracy became such a threat in the Mediterranean that Rome launched massive campaigns to wipe it out. One of the most famous Roman generals, Pompey the Great, was given extraordinary powers to hunt down pirates. Within a few months, he cleared the seas, and piracy in the Mediterranean was crushed, at least for a while. But pirates always came back, because as long as trade exists, so too will those willing to steal it. The medieval raiders. During the Middle Ages, piracy shifted north. The Vikings of Scandinavia became the terror of Europe. From the 8th to the 11th century, they raided coastal towns, monasteries, and merchant ships. Unlike pirates that came later, the Vikings were more than thieves. They were explorers, colonizers, and warriors. But the medieval world also had its share of sea bandits, closer to our modern idea of pirates. In the Mediterranean, Muslim corsairs raided Christian ships, while Christian pirates attacked Muslim merchants. This was especially common during the Crusades. In East Asia, Wokou pirates from Japan raided the coasts of China and Korea. And in the Indian Ocean, Arab and Swahili pirates targeted trade routes that carried spices, silk, and precious gems. In every part of the world, pirates were both feared and at times secretly supported by rulers who wanted to weaken their rivals. Which brings us to one of the strangest truths about piracy. Sometimes it wasn't entirely illegal. Privateers, pirates with permission. Imagine being a pirate but with a license from your king. That's exactly what a privateer was. In the 16th and 17th centuries, European empires, Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands, were locked in constant competition for colonies and trade routes. War was expensive and navies were costly to maintain. So governments came up with a clever idea. Why not let private sailors attack enemy ships for them? A privateer would be given a letter of marque, a legal document granting them the right to plunder enemy vessels. The privateer got to keep a share of the loot, while the crown received both money and chaos inflicted on its rivals. One of the most famous privateers was Sir Francis Drake, an Englishman who raided Spanish treasure fleets in the 1500s. To the Spanish, he was a criminal. To the English, he was a hero. So much so that Queen Elizabeth I personally knighted him. But the line between privateer and pirate was thin. The same man could be celebrated one year and hunted as an outlaw the next, depending on whether war had ended. And when wars ended, many privateers didn't stop. They simply continued raiding, now without permission. And so, the Golden Age of Piracy began. The Golden Age of Piracy. The period between 1650 and 1730 is often called the Golden Age of Piracy. This is when the legends we know today, Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Anne Bonny, rose to prominence and fame. So, what made this era so explosive? The answer lies in history. After the end of the War of the Spanish Succession in 1713, thousands of sailors were suddenly unemployed. They had spent years at sea, knew how to fight, and had no jobs waiting for them. Many turned to piracy. At the same time, the Caribbean was a perfect breeding ground for pirates. Spanish treasure fleets carried gold and silver from the Americas back to Europe. Colonies shipped sugar, tobacco, and rum. The islands were scattered with countless hidden coves for pirates to hide in. It was a pirate's paradise. Life on a pirate ship. Forget Hollywood's glamorous image. Life as a pirate was brutal. But compared to working on a navy or merchant ship, it was surprisingly democratic. Pirate crews often ran like floating republics. Captains were elected by the crew and could be voted out if they failed. Loot was divided more fairly than on merchant ships, where common sailors earned little. On a pirate ship, even the lowest crewmen got a share. They even had codes of conduct, known as articles. These rules laid out punishments for theft, cowardice, or fighting on board. Some even offered compensation for injuries like early forms of insurance. For example, losing a leg might earn you 800 pieces of 8. Conditions, however, were harsh. Pirates lived in cramped and often filthy quarters. Food was rotten, diseases spread easily, and battles could be deadly. But for many, it was worth it compared to the cruelty of the Navy. And the freedom was intoxicating. Many pirates were escaped slaves, poor sailors, or men fleeing oppressive governments. On a pirate ship, they found equality, at least among themselves. The most famous pirates. Let's meet some of the most notorious figures of the Golden Age. Blackbeard, Edward Teach, perhaps one of the most feared pirate of all time. With his wild beard, burning fuses in his hat, and terrifying reputation, Blackbeard was more showman than monster. He blockaded the port of Charleston in 1718 and was killed in a dramatic battle shortly after. Calico Jack Rackham, famous not so much for his success, but for sailing with two of the most legendary female pirates, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Anne Bonny and Mary Read, disguising themselves as men, they fought fiercely alongside their crew. When their ship was finally captured, legend says they fought to the bitter end, while the male pirates hid away below deck. Bartholomew Roberts, Black Bart, one of the most successful pirates ever. He captured over 400 ships in just 3 years. Unlike the chaotic image of other pirates, Roberts was disciplined and ran his crew like clockwork. These names became legends, but they were just the tip of the iceberg. The fall of the pirates. By the 1720s, piracy had grown out of control. Trade was being stifled and the empires had reached their breaking point. Britain, Spain, and France all decided to crack down hard. Navies hunted pirates relentlessly. Captured pirates were put on public trial and then hanged, often left on display as a warning to others. In London, Jamaica, and the American colonies, pirate executions became a grim spectacle. The golden age for piracy was over. By 1730, the great pirate fleets had been destroyed, and only scattered raiders remained. But the legend was just beginning. Pirate myths versus reality. So where did all the stereotypes come from? The parrots, the X marks the spot, the aura, matey. Most of these come not from history but from books and movies. In 1883, Robert Louis Stevenson published Treasure Island. It gave us the image of the peg-legged pirate with a parrot, the buried treasure map, and the famous yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. Later, Hollywood films like Captain Blood, 1935, and Pirates of the Caribbean cemented these images. The real pirates didn't talk like that, didn't bury treasure, and certainly weren't all charming rogues. But the myths survive because they're irresistible. They turn criminals into adventurers and murderers into rebels. Pirates today. You might think piracy died centuries ago, but it hasn't. Even today, pirates roam the seas, especially in parts of Africa and Southeast Asia. In the early 2000s, Somali pirates made global headlines, hijacking cargo ships and holding crews for ransom. Unlike the pirates of old, they used speedboats and assault rifles instead of sails and cutlasses. Piracy never truly disappears, it simply changes with the times. The truth is, pirates were not heroes, but neither were they just villains. They were products of their age, sailors who chose freedom, however bloody, over submission. They lived fast, died young, and left behind stories that have haunted our imaginations for centuries. The real pirates were tougher, more ruthless, and stranger than how Hollywood often fails to portray. Yet in many ways, the legends capture something real: the longing for adventure, the dream of freedom, and the thrill of defiance against the odds. And that's why, centuries later, the black flag still flies in our imagination. So what do you think is the real story behind the legends of pirates? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye for now.